Welcome everyone to this hangout on a Tuesday. Well, for me, the afternoon. For other people, it's all different times. This is our Make With Me session for Make Cycle 4 for the CLMOOC, where we've been starting to kind of play around and talk about animation and GIF creation as a way to think about making and being creative. And so we're going to have a discussion about some of that today. And we have a number of people that have joined us, which has been really great. I just want to say this is the 5th year of CLMOOC, Connected Learning MOOC. The last 2 years, it's been all the participants behind the scenes kind of organizing everything, which has been really cool. So we hope you've had a great summer with us, and we've certainly made a lot of stuff. And I want to turn it over to Sarah, who will kind of get us started and probably move us into some introductions. And I'll just say that I'm Kevin Hodgson, and I teach 6th grades, 11 and 12-year-olds out in Western Massachusetts, and I'm part of the Western Massachusetts Writing Project as well. Sarah, hi.
Hi, so I'm Sarah Honeychurch. I'm a good practice advisor at the University of Glasgow, and I'm also a PhD student, and I'm doing my PhD on creative playfulness in CLMOOC. That's the title for today anyway. So I'm going to just go along to my left and pass over to Terry Green and get Terry to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Terry Green. I'm a learning technology specialist at Fleming College, which is in Peterborough, Ontario. So I'm northwest-ish of Kevin, and stuff I was supposed to tell you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit, but you're okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Say? I'm sorry.
You're breaking up a little bit still, Terry, but
okay, hold on. Let me switch to camera off, and now can you hear me well?
Yep.
Okay. So I introduced myself and my job, but I kind of forget what else I was supposed to mention at this point.
That's pretty good, I think, for now.
Okay. All right. Carry on. All right. Thank you.
My name is Terry Elliott. I'm an instructor at Western Kentucky University, and I am a technology coordinator with the Western Kentucky University Writing Project. And I saw the coolest thing this morning when I was out working on the farm. I had to go and get some feed, and I saw a 4-horse team with a hay bine on an Amish farm nearby. And it's just really encouraging that there's still enough agriculture left that you can have a 4-horse team and they're actually doing work. Really looking forward to this today. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, Terry.
Hi, I'm Claire, and I'm a learning technologist in Queen's University in Belfast, and I work mostly within the medical education area. And I've spent the entire day today in a room talking about VLE functionality with a 10-minute lunch break. So this is a very good reminder of what the other side of life can be. The creativity, the free flow. This is what keeps me going. So looking forward to this.
Hey, Claire. Yep.
Am I go now?
Yes.
Hear me?
Yep.
Right. I am Neil. Neil Barr. I work at Glasgow University. I'm in IT at the moment, but long ago, my first job at Glasgow University, I was a multimedia developer, and I developed bits of very simple animation, which I then used for teaching aspects of biology. So found that animation was a really good way to communicate with people about concentrations of ions and how nerves worked. And then my own real discipline of biomechanics, showing people how insects' joints work and how they're different from other animals. So that was my sort of introduction to animation in the 1990s. And I haven't done much since, unfortunately.
Thanks. Well, Sarah, you want to kind of lead us a little bit in some things you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Neil's introduction is moving exactly the right way, I think, because one thing I was thinking that we could start off by doing is just sort of saying, what sort of things do we make and how do we make them? Because I know we've got a bunch of really fantastically creative people here in different ways. So Terry Green, I'm going to nominate you again because I'm aware that you can't stay for the whole session. So maybe you want to say a bit about DS106 and the stuff that you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, anything that I know about animating or GIFing or GIFing would come from getting involved as a participant in DS106, the digital storytelling open cult, or whatever you call it. It's if you're not aware of that, it's an open course that started from a real course at University of Mary Washington in Virginia, right? And they just started to run it openly alongside the officially credited course, and now it's just taken on a life of its own, and it's got a lot of very cool characters, interesting people, creative people sharing daily all kinds of stuff, and it often ends up making GIFs or GIFs, not all the time, but I typically, there's a daily create sent out every day that I've done a few hundred times now. And I often, because I find the GIFing, I'm just going to say GIF every time because I don't know which one's right.
Me either.
So even if the daily create suggestion is just to have an image, I've been often creating a GIF anyway, just because they've been so much fun to make. And I just have a couple of different ways to make them. The easier way is just to take a clip from something available on YouTube and adding captions. Like I got into a Big Lebowski GIF battle with Alan Levine one day. That was pretty fun. And you just add your own captions, that's simple, doesn't take too long. And then the more complex way I know is through Photoshop. The image is like, it kind of looks like Kevin's doing here. And then publishing it into a GIF. That's more work, but more creative and more fun most of the time. So those are my two GIF ways, GIF.
GIF. I think it's GIF. I think the maker of it said it was GIF, but hey, what does he know?
Well, yeah, apparently the CompuServe guys turned up to a conference after years of everyone arguing, and they called it GIF. So I guess the people who originated it get to say what it's called.
All right, GIF.
I don't know. Language moves on, we can call it what we want. So Claire, what about you? Because I know that you're a little bit newer to all of this, but you've come in through the DS106 route recently as well, haven't you? And I can see your daughter, and I particularly wanted to ask you, Claire, you did a GIF yesterday using PowerPoint, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, well, I think because I spent such a lot of time watching these things and seeing people make them so easily and being really creative and funny, and most of my day job is probably quite sensible and not very involving, that kind of thing. So I wanted to try and start to use what I had a lot more and try and work out then how I could move that across to the students and work in how they can get involved in these things. So yeah, I think I was just trying to do more with what I had and with what my students I know have, and really just push the limits to that and see if you can do things. And I tried to do it with the phone, with the apps, and it just wasn't quite as easy. And I think you're perfectionist whenever your developer gets the hand of you, and you get lost in the quick and fast because you want to go back and make it right and take out the crinkles. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
So I think that's really interesting, because I think we can all be perfectionists. And one thing I've been learning recently is just to sort of let go and just sort of do stuff, put it out there, even though it's not perfect. Like my doodling, for example. But Telio, why don't you tell us about some of the sort of your motivations for doing all of this animation, because you're one of the most amazingly productive, sharing, generous people that I know.
Wow. I don't know what to say. Just that GIFs seem to be another genre for me. And I think the way to get involved with them is find something else to use them for. Like put them in your emails. Put them in something that you use on a regular basis. Or there are some apps out there that they're fairly simple. Kevin had a great one today using an app called Legend. I think that's about as simple and easy and effective an app as there is out there right now. But this, I have over in the chat, I have a link to a GIF that I made for and put on Giphy. And I think another thing that might make it easier for people is to get an account with Giphy. And then like Terry, who uses YouTube to create GIFs, what a godsend that has been, hasn't it? So you just save it, you just create a GIF on YouTube, and you can, and then add whatever you want to it, and then store it on Giphy. And that way you've got something that you can share with other people, because it's got an address on the cloud, and a lot of places want an address on the cloud in order to use it. Another thing I use GIFs for is for responses in in annotation software like Hypothesis, and I think those are. I'm not sure people accept those as legitimate responses, but I do. I mean, there's even something called a response GIF. Very particular kind of reaction you get, a facial reaction you get. So I mean, there's just lots and lots of uses for GIFs, and I just they're fun. They're just fun. Why would you not want to use them? That's it. I guess a lot of other stuff, but I don't want to.
I think our use, I say our because I've kind of followed your lead a little bit on the idea of using them for reaction and annotations of online text. I think is a really interesting way to think about how the visual short text, if any text, right, come into play, and what kind of emotion are you trying to evoke from the reader of the margin of the text that you're annotating? I think in that case, the whole, GIF plays pretty well there, because it kind of moves beyond the text. I also think it probably can be misinterpreted in some ways. I don't know, more than words? I guess I'm not sure about that as I say that. In kind of interesting ways. But I think I agree with you. I mean, I think it's fun for me when I'm reading the text and I'm trying to annotate it and thinking about, okay, what visual do I want to represent how I'm feeling about this paragraph or this passage or this line, and how do I best represent that visually? You can do it with static images, and I've done that. And I think that a combination of that text and moving parts, I think all kind of engage me as a reader in the text in a different way. So that's one of the reasons I like them.
Just to briefly respond there to that, I think there's kind of like a continuum for me. It's become less a single tool as kind of a spectrum of tools. That it starts with video, and then you have GIFs, which you can pull out of videos, and then you have static images, which you can create, and that gives you 3 incredible tools for communicating, and like Kevin says, miscommunicating, if you really want to do that. It's something we'll never see Donald Trump do in his Twitter account. So let's get that straight right now. We're doing next level work here, okay? Thanks, Kevin.
Can I just sort of ask a question of everybody? So those of us who've all kind of reminisced about how we started out as developers doing animations, and I would have used a lot of Flash all those years ago. And then what really, why have we all gone from there? Was it video? Is video taken over and now we're all kind of returning to the simpler and the quicker?
That is a really good question. You know, I think, so the cynical part of me thinks that it's the lazy way out, right? That social media has kind of lent to this idea of quick, short images where you don't have to think a lot about kind of making it, and you blast it out, and that piece of it. And then the other piece of me is the kind of what Terry Elliott was just talking about is, you know, the spectrum of an idea to video to GIF to image, and how it all kind of come together, hopefully. But I guess, I mean, I don't teach that to my students, so hopefully later on we'll get to this idea of, do they have applications in the classroom or not? But I can see all the parts and how, you know, what goes into that. And I think it's even more powerful if the original video is the one that you've made as opposed to one you found on YouTube or wherever. So I may have veered completely away from your question, Claire, and I'm sorry if I did. But maybe others can jump in.
Whenever I think about this question, and it's a good question, it's one I come back to over and over again, is the idea whether you know, the philosopher Walter Ong had something he called orality, and he said humans were basically oral, except for this short period of time after Gutenberg invented the printing press. And some people call that the Gutenberg pause. And that what's actually happening right now is that the pause is over, because now we have the tools where we can express ourselves in ways that are not just text. And it's why so many people in my profession, in English and composition, they're always anxious to steal other media. Everything becomes a text, right? So images become text, and audio files become text. Everything's text. And so maybe what's happening is that pause is kind of, the pause button is coming off of the text dominance, and this is really the natural order of things that human beings have had since we started doing cave drawings in Lascaux, and well before that.
I mean, I think that's an interesting question, because I don't see necessarily doing GIFs and things like that as digital writing. And I know it's a conversation that we've had, and I've had it along with Karen Labonte and people like that. But what does everybody else think? Do you think that when we're doing all of this animation, it's digital writing, or is it something else?
I don't know why calling it writing, but it's certainly digital expression, and it's, you know, I'm usually adding writing to a GIF, and it's just embedded amongst post or something. It's just another piece of the puzzle that adds more fun and more fun to everything. It adds another layer, I think.
I never really think of it as writing, but I don't think of myself as a writer, really. To me, it's much more an aspect of drawing and art.
Yeah, I think it depends on the scope of the project, but I think the writing is what happens underneath it all, right? So if you're planning, let's say, to try to have a really concrete message or a story, then the storyboarding and the other things that kind of happen underneath it become the writing piece of it that maybe isn't visible to the audience, but it's still an element of composition. But you know, whether a GIF is digital writing, I'm not really quite sure. You know, longer animations may or may not kind of fall within that scope of things. So I'm thinking like, Neil, when you're talking about how you first got in and thinking about animation with biology concepts, I guess I'm curious to know a little bit more kind of how that went and like what was going on behind the scenes to actually kind of make that happen, because that's not something you can just throw together. I mean, there has to be some kind of planning stages behind it that become the underpinning, the compositional underpinning of it, I guess is how I think about it.
Well, when I first started doing it, there were, my job description very much said I had to use multimedia to support teaching, and it turned out I did a lot of the teaching as well. But we had a package called Authorware, which now fortunately has gone, but was a sort of multimedia authoring tool. And I tried to use animation to make things that I found difficult to understand easier to understand. And I hoped that the students were having the same issues. But at the same time, I was sort of using my own stuff for one lesson, and there was another lesson I did with some software written by a guy at St Andrews University, and his speciality was how the electrical signals pass through nerves, which is basically caused by ion channels opening to allow different ions to leak back and forwards through the nerve fiber. So he'd made little animations to explain how that was happening and then how toxins would affect them. And it was a really effective way of understanding. So that sort of made me think a lot more about using animation later on when I started trying to teach biomechanics, which is my actual subject, and looking at how insects work and how they're different from vertebrates because their skeleton is all exterior rather than interior.
It seems like animations really are helpful with particularly science concepts. Is that?
Yes, I think so. And again, like even longer ago, I trained as an engineer, and seeing animations of how an engine works just makes it much easier to understand than someone describing it. So yeah, I think a lot of science concepts can be taught very well using animations. And things like cell division and stuff like that. Oh, that's my camera just cut out.
We can still hear you pretty well.
Right, yeah, so I'm not using the microphone in the camera, so I think for some reason this camera's become a bit unreliable today.
There's a really neat animation tool that I put in the, I thought I put it over in the links. Oh, here it is. It's called Loopy, and it's a way to do systems analysis using animations. And I'm seeing this a lot. I saw a really cool, I can't bring it to mind right now, but basically it's a game of trust. And it's using animations, and then it's got some sort of database behind it where you can actually do some experimenting and with it. So I'm seeing a lot of animations being tied into learning, but more in an interactive way. And it's pretty exciting, really. These animations are exciting. I've been, I'm addicted to RSA Animate because they're one of the most amazing ways to present information. But I also like doing animations. I've got a little tool called a boogie board, and it allows you just to draw on it, and then when you're done, you can save it as a JPEG or as a video. And the cool thing is, once it's in the video form, put it on YouTube and turn it into a GIF, and then put it on Giphy, and Bob's your uncle. It's ready to be shared with other people. So, I think a lot of this is starting to come together as a more natural way of communicating. GIFs and animation kind of hand in hand, along with images. And it's a new era. I don't know how to teach this stuff. I'll admit that straight up. So I'm looking all the time for cool ways to integrate this stuff into my classes. And, if you can help, I'm ready to listen.
Well, I used to do more stop motion animation. This is what I'm doing is, this is a make with me, in case you're wondering, like, what's this thing crawling on Kevin's head? I'm just trying to do the stop motion with this new add-on to Chrome that Richard Burns shared last week, and I can't remember what it's called right now. Look in a second. Stop motion animator. And so I used to do claymation with my students, and I've run camps that have done it to teach storytelling. And this is what I'm talking about, like the underneath stuff about storyboarding and trying to tell a story that has a certain kind of arc around it, but having a lot of fun with it too. And we used to publish with another class down in Maryland together at a kind of site. Actually, I went there today, and all their videos are now gone, so I have to kind of revamp things. But I don't know, I think maybe with, it used to be that having cameras was our issue, like having enough webcams to kind of hook up to the computer to use. But now almost every computer comes with, some kind of webcam related. It gets a little trickier for like stop motion, I think, because I'm kind of stuck using this camera, right here. So I'm limited in what I can do in a way. I can't move the webcam around like we used to. But for engagement of students, it's hard to beat kind of making an animation movie. It's also requires a lot of perseverance and patience too, because you make a lot of mistakes. So.
And I guess a big question I have all the time, which is sort of, I think, underrunning what we're saying, is I do a lot of this stuff just for fun. I just play around, I mess around. I don't really care if I'm learning. I don't teach this sort of stuff. But are there ways that we can use what we're doing in this sort of CLMOOC DS106 messing around world that we can actually have implications for the way that we teach? So I'm thinking, Claire, particularly, and Terry, those of us who sort of come from a learning tech background, how do we use these lessons to support other members of staff in doing this stuff?
Well, I think I've been thinking a lot about how to translate the CLMOOC fun across to students, and I've started writing this week a list, because obviously our students are very driven by data. So I've started a new list of 50 ways to show your data. So I'm not going to add stop motion as number 27. That's as far as I've got. And I think really I'm going to have a look at starting with PhD students who are doing education but medicine together as their PhDs, and then trying to work through a lot of these things about presenting their data in the future.
One of the reasons I've been thinking quite a bit about animation is because a lot of the teachers at our university are beginning to think much more about flipping the classroom, so they'll prepare lots of material beforehand. And a lot of the time that means making videos which they'll stick onto the VLE. So I've been trying to think, how can I help them make videos which are better? And possibly simple bits of animation can be used for that. A couple of teachers I'm working with are doing Khan Academy style videos where they're using a graphics tablet and drawing equations or teaching maths. And I was thinking, well, maybe the bit of software they're using to teach the maths could also have a small animation aspect in it, so that could allow a different area. So I could imagine teaching probability and things like that. Sometimes it might be useful to have some moving diagrams that help understand the meaning of the maths when applied to the real world.
For me, I just I like to put them in places like our weekly blog and or in news items in the an LMS or VLE, and then wait for people to ask how to make those. They'll see them, they think they're cool. You can say, hey, I made this with this thing. If you're interested in making one, let us know. And then they're going to come to you when they're ready, because they see it as something. Another way I've used GIFs. Have you heard of a tool called Giazo? Giazo.com. You can, just spilled my coffee. You can record a screencast into a GIF. So I've used that for very simple, find yourself telling people about the LMS or the VLE, like, these things collapse. Here's a video of that happening, and it'll just be looping. It hasn't disappeared. It's just been collapsed. So you can just have that GIF looping on a news item to just get the word out there that that's what happens. So instead of having a video screencast of 10 minutes of you describing all this stuff, like a 5-second thing, you can record it in a GIF and publish it right into the wherever people are going to have their eyeballs. I'll put a link to it.
That'd be great. That sounds actually really interesting. And I think that back here. I mean, I think that idea of a looping tutorial that explains something visually, I think, can be really helpful. So yeah, I'd be curious to know about that resource that you found, Terry.
I think it's interesting that videos have come to have that kind of look to them. I can't remember whether it's BuzzFeed. It's one of those style news organizations where they've got audio. It's video, but it seems very giphy. And on the audio, they've also got text, which underscores whatever's being said. And they're very punchy, and they're very, very effective. And I like them a lot. I'd like to learn how to make those myself. I have an example of one that I made earlier using a tool called, I can never remember the name of this thing, Typey Video, TYPI Video. And it's interesting because while Kevin was writing a blog post about kinetic typography, which I just love, I was looking at this tool on using kinetic typography and trying to find something online that didn't cost 40 or 50 bucks. And this was $4. That's the most I've paid for an app in 5 years, I think. But it's a blast. And to me, you know, Sarah, I'm not sure you need, you need a justification, but I don't think I need a justification beyond it's intrinsically a blast to do this stuff. And because what I think happens is that attitude of accepting image and crossing mixed media is so valuable in my line of work with composition, because our students are moving into areas where that's what they're going to do. You know, it's not just going to be all text. I mean, even with academic work, you got somebody like Nick Susanis, whose PhD, his dissertation was a graphic novel, a graphic philosophy book. So I think inherently, I really need to be able to just have access to these tools, whether I use them a lot. I do use them in things like my learning management system at my university is Blackboard, grinding teeth. And I try to put GIFs in there simply, just like Terry said, it's just as a way to say, hey, I know this is a grinding little terrible LMS, but we can have fun in here, right? It's not just a stupid little silo. You can do stuff and I can do stuff, and together we can make this a lot more interesting and fun than it usually is.
I think I'm interested in that fun aspect, especially as I'm trying to get it into more of the curriculum. And I tried January to introduce Lego workshops to the medical students. So I went for first year because I thought, if I'm going to get this in, I'm going to have to try first year first. And that's exactly the thing. The ones that came back that got it, it was amazing. They knew it was reflective. They had fun. It was therapeutic. It was touchable and 3D. And the ones who didn't get it were the ones that I knew. And it was, I could have been in the library. What was this all about? I can't believe we're spending your money on Lego for us, and we could have been in the library. And it's like, oh. So I'm kind of wondering how far up the curriculum I can kind of work that in, and if I can even go there with the staff, with the same, what is this all about approach.
You say use Legos is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So can you talk more about how, I mean, Legos make the perfect for animation, right? But how did you use it for medical class?
So because I wasn't doing anything so animation wise, it was literally a workshop. So it was supposed to be something called development weeks. So it was very much a buy-in. It was totally open. So I went for just a reflective tool. So getting them to learn without knowing. So they had an individual task where they had to just build themselves in any shape or form. So it could have been abstract, literal, a person, a pile of bricks that did nothing. And then they talked back per each table, and we put lots of photos up. And then they worked as a group on the tables, and they had to just visualize where their journey was in medicine as a group. And that was really interesting because a lot of them only ever got to graduation. That was literally their journey. They saw that as their end goal, and that's as far as it went. Other ones went further into thinking about specialties, thinking about other things. And an awful lot of stuff came out in their reflections that they wouldn't have done otherwise. They talked a lot about professional bodies looking in on them, where they thought that things were scary, how much they were stressed but didn't want to tell each other. So they were able to do that in a safer way. So essentially, how I rounded it up was at the end, I got them to kind of focus on the fact that their e-portfolio is something that is mandatory. And I was trying to get them to see that reflection wasn't just about, right, what did I do? Write it up, tick the box. And it was a lot more about how they could think about things differently, how they could use images, how they could use objects, and also the therapy side.
Oh, Claire froze. Claire froze up.
First years, trying to introduce each other.
That sounds really interesting and fascinating. I'm looking at a note that Neil wrote in our little chat about students running a Lego YouTube channel. And, you know, one of the things that I know with my students, these are 11 and 12-year-olds, that, you know, phones and mobile devices have opened up filmmaking for younger kids in ways that are still, I think, will be felt kind of in the years to come, I think, in the big screens. And I think that free stop motion apps in particular for some kids have been an amazing place for creativity. And then you go into a place like YouTube where there are these entire communities of kids sharing out not just their final projects, right, but all the process along the way of how they did what they did. The behind the scenes of videos are as popular, I think, as the final project. And then the bloopers. I mean, there are kids who just make blooper videos as if they made a bigger movie, but you know, they just want to have the blooper part of things. And, you know, so you have this whole kind of realm of filmmaking that's starting to really take root. And I guess I'm just really fascinated to figure out, like, what's that going to look like for, well, if Hollywood's still around or whatever, you know, you want to call it in the country you live in, you know, what's going to happen to the film industry, I think, when these kids kind of make it when they're kind of ready to make their feature films, or maybe they'll make something else. I'm not sure. It's just really interesting, I think.
Claire, I'm absolutely in love with this idea of creating Lego avatars for reflection. And I'm just thinking, well, how you had that question of how far can you run this game? And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, so what you did was kind of a sidestep on reflection, how to reflect in a different way. And it seems to me that anytime you can do that kind of a sidestep, while you still have the conventional way of doing it, you should give it a try, or at least give it as an option for students. Show it and just say, okay, here's another way to do this. And I think the sky's the limit I guess if somebody's cutting on me, I'm not sure I want to I want a Lego avatar with that. But I'm just really impressed with your ideas, and I'd like to read a lot more about it. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, and I think just getting back to why we have like themes and like places like CLMOOC, right, is to hopefully give us teachers and educators and who's ever in it a chance to play around and think about that and learn from others and learn from ourselves. And so, I know that we're all hoping that, people dive in and try some different things. I think there's still a barrier where people see the word animation and are reluctant to kind of take the step forward, or at least that's my feel. I don't know how other people kind of see it. Do you feel like there's still a kind of wall there, even though we're talking about how easy it can be? It just feels that way to me a lot.
Yeah, no, I think so. I would agree with that. There's still a stigma about the whole concept of play or fun or learning, especially with higher education. I don't know if it's the same in secondary schools or if it just it feels like a line down from childhood. But maybe that's just me.
I think you're right. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with Claire and just say absolutely. I sort of put myself down all the time, or I keep saying all I'm doing is playing. Why don't I just say, no, I'm playing, I'm having fun. Nothing wrong with playing. I learn so much from it. And I guess it's how we get that message across to other people, that it's not just playing, it's purposeful playing.
Yeah, that word "just" is such an evil little adverb, because it's a put down. And I think anything that helps you engage, and that's another cliche, sorry, but maybe mix it up, like you're fighting, you're shuffling in, and you're maybe that's too violent. But I think anything that allows us to, Kevin, like all the different hangouts and things we've tried this week, I think they are to get people out of their comfort zone, and play is just the natural way of doing that. Kids don't worry about whether their sandbox play is right or correct. They just do it. And I think as adults, we say, well, it's got to have an end game. You have an end game with this stuff, man. And I don't think you do. I really don't think you do need to have an end game. I think unless you want to, that's part of your play, is to get serious. I mean, play can be pretty damn serious. In fact, most kids I see who are in play mode are pretty serious about what they're doing.
Yeah, and this, I think, Terry, actually sort of fits in with what I was thinking about last week when I was asking, what's the difference between doodling and drawing? There isn't a difference. There isn't a goddamn difference at all. Maybe it's a sliding scale. And maybe it's the same thing here, I think. What's the difference between doing it seriously and doing it for play? There isn't really.
When you were talking about this, I was trying to think of all the different ways that I've used animation and GIFs and the like. And the stuff that's of least use to anybody else has been the most useful to me. For example, there's an open source tool called Etherpad, and we used to use this a lot. HackPad came out of Etherpad. Etherpad is you can find it on Git. You can serve it there. There's a cool place called Sandstorm, where you can get it for free. And the coolest thing about it is this besides the fact that it's a collaborative space for writing, is that there's something called a timeline. And in the timeline, what it does is simply records everything you've done on the screen, everything you've added, everything you subtracted, everything everybody else has added. So when you're done, what you've got is a record of all of the activity that has happened on it. And I thought to myself one day, oh, this is really cool. This is a movie. So all you do is you take a screenshot, you take a screencast of the timeline. You set it up, you start it, you got your screen going, and there you've got a movie. And of course, if you've got a movie, you've got a GIF, right? So I haven't done any of these in a long time, but I started doing poetry with that. And I think Kevin and I might have done a couple of things together using this, and I don't know why we haven't gone back to it. There's just so many other fun things to do. But I think this is that attitude, instead of knowing lots of different tools, is having an attitude towards the tools that is so critical. And for me, the attitude is like you're talking about, Sarah, is, yeah, I don't care. I don't care what you think about my drawing. And I do the same thing too. Wendy Taleo wanted a GIF of mine that was, I couldn't get it to her. And finally I got it to her. And I said, why do you want this thing? It's so ugly. And he said, no, I like it. So you just don't know. It's that play and the attitude you take. If I was going to teach one thing to a kid, and this is almost impossible to do, but it's the attitude of play towards the tools. And then that way, you create what you want, but you never feel like the tool is controlling you. If the tool dies, if it explodes, so what? Pick up a pencil, pick up a pen, pick your nose, I don't care. Whatever it is you do. And, that to me is kind of a devil-may-care look at things. I would love it if more of my students were like that at the university level. I would really love that. They'd all get A's. All get A's.
I think that idea of playing around with technology or whatever and trying to discover either hidden features or things that the developer didn't think about, I think that's a key part of that play nature of learning, really. If you can learn that translates to all sorts of things in your life, right? That you're not stuck in the way that the developer of whatever it happens to be wants you to act, that you're going to act the way your creativity, your desire is kind of bringing you. And you're right, if that tool doesn't work, throw it out and try another one. Or if it crashes on you, then find a new place. I'm just thinking of when I first started thinking about, and I know Claire was planning on a PowerPoint this week, of how to animate, how to do the kinetic kind of text, and thinking of the animation feature in PowerPoint, and that idea of having just one slide, but everything kind of moving within that one slide, and having to figure that out on my own. I'm sure somewhere there's some tutorial about it. But that playing around with it and the quite a bit of time that I took translated into a lot of different things later on around layering and framing and other things like that. And so giving students of any age, I think, a chance to play around and try to figure things out. I think, well, most of us are here because we realize the power of that, but it also doesn't always translate, though, into a lot of educational environments, I would say, where outcome is everything.
And Neil, as a developer, I'd just like you to, what do you think about people just going away and doing what they want with your tools and not doing what you want with them?
That's absolutely fine, but there's always the caveat that if they're doing something I've not thought of, they're likely to break things. That's actually why software developers should never be software testers. because we don't think the right way. We know what we would have done when writing the software, therefore we don't make them do this, not stupid, but different way of thinking things. When we get asked to test software, really, I always feel that is incredibly stupid, because Howard, Alex, and I, the three of us that do the VLE, we just are far too understanding what's going on underneath to ever make the right sort of wrong choices.
This is why I like one thing, Tara. Now I'll turn to you, but this is why when I do a game design unit with my students, and we talk about the video game design industry, they all want to be play testers, right? Because the job of the play tester is to kind of come in and with the software developer over their shoulder, right, kind of seeing what a real person kind of does it without that knowledge. I think it's kind of interesting. Sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Neil reminded me of something that we said the first year we did CLMOOC was let's break the MOOC, and it was kind of an underground motto, but the idea behind it was let's not be satisfied with the status quo. If the status quo is good, then we should probably break the status quo and make the status quo better, which again you break, iteration after iteration. But I love that notion of the user experience experiencers. They're not going to do. They like to break things. I like to break things, and I break things on a regular basis, and sometimes I'll look left and look right, and then there it is. It's broken. I think we all have that inherently in it.
Yeah, I think that's human nature. I like to break things. I miss not being a tester anymore now. So I'm just aware, look, we've only got sort of 5 minutes left. So I was wondering, we've been talking a lot about animation, talking a lot about GIFs. I was wondering about adding audio to GIFs and what we think about that, because I'm aware that like Wendy has been sharing some fantastic stuff. What do you think, Terry?
I think that tool, I've been watching that tool for the last year and a half, maybe a little bit longer. And at first, it did not have this capacity to mash up a YouTube video sound with a GIF. And when Wendy showed it to us on Twitter the other day, I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I've been trying to use it ever since. But I think, I think GIFs technically are inherently unsoundable. You can't add sound to them, so you have to do workarounds, which I think is great. So here's a technical tool that's designed to be limited. It is designed to be limited, and so what it says to you is, you want it to do more, then you have to make it do more. And I think that's an innovator's toolkit right there. And you get that to a kid, and so I hope they never really effectively easily add sound to GIFs. These mashups and workarounds are fabulous. They're so much fun.
I think really, the origins of the GIF is CompuServe's an American ISP who were dealing with phone lines basically in 1987, and then 89 they added animation. So nothing's changed since 1989, but there has been an attempt to make a better animated format, which is the MPing, and it's hardly been picked up. I think people just like the simplicity and basicness of the GIF, and that's what has stuck. And if you really want to do proper big production with sound and animation, well, there's MPEG or whatever, and all the video formats are there for it.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I just go back to liking breaking things. Okay, so we've got like 2 minutes left. I'm just amazed how quickly this is all gone. So I think it's probably time for each of us just to go along and just say goodbye. And I'll tell you what, for the rest of the week, I'm going to be trying and pushing boundaries, and I'm going to try and see different ways that I can add audio to animations. So over to you, Terry.
Unmute, Terry.
I was just, I've been following this this website called Carpe Diem, and this guy's written a book. But the thing that's interesting about the site is what he calls click stories. And I wrote to him, and I'm trying to figure out, how do you make these things? And one person wrote back to me, say, well, if you look at the code underneath it, it looks like it's just HTML. And so this week I'm going to look at how to maybe create these click stories, because it adds elements of text and sound, and they're just really cool. So that's what I'm going to do.
Claire?
I'll go next. So thank you very much for inviting me. This was a really good chat, and thank you very much for your patience with my little helper who was trying to join in a lot and very upset with you for not waving. She can't understand why you can't hear her. And I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to catch up with everybody's links, I think, during the week, what's left of it, and a lot of those new tools that are new to me. So that's my plan.
Can you tell us where we can follow you, Claire?
So I'm at Claire Thompson QUB on Twitter. And Claire.Thompson at Google Mail. So I think that's where it should be in there.
Thank you.
Final words, Neil? 2 seconds.
I think what I might do is actually try and tell a story with a GIF. So maybe I'll write a story and then see if I can animate it.
And Kevin?
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just still going to play around, I think, and try to be a good audience for other people who are playing around too. So I think we're all doing that, I know, naturally, but it's been a great pleasure hanging out with all of you today, and Terry, who had to leave a little early on us as well. Do you want to talk about the Twitter chat coming up, Sarah?
Yep, so we got a Twitter chat on Thursday at the same time as today, which will get shared across the various platforms. And again, we're going to be talking about animation and GIFs and all of this stuff. And one thing I really want to talk about actually during the chat is accessibility, because we have great fun doing all of this stuff, but how do we make it accessible for everybody? And I'm going to hand over to Kevin now to wrap this up and switch us all off.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone who was watching, and we're going to archive this and share it back out, and maybe you'll make some funny GIFs of our faces as we kind of go along. So thanks, and keep playing around all week. All right, everybody.